On this edition of Fulton at Work, the transition of services continues from Fulton County to the newest city in South Fulton. From jobs to tax matters, we're talking to the county leaders putting in the long hours to ensure the transition is a smooth one. I'm Daryl Carver. All that and more starts right now on Fulton at Work. Welcome to Fulton at Work. The third largest city in Fulton County is now official. Since the end of 2016, county officials have met with county employees on a monthly basis to answer their job status questions with the new city of South Fulton. During May's meeting, the city's interim city manager addressed the staffers for the first time. So what did she say? FGTV's Priscilla Ortega has the story.
The number one question from employees who are impacted by the new city of South Fulton is, will I have a job? And for the 400 employees who are impacted include those in the departments of Parks and Rec, Police, Fire, and Zoning departments.
Getting closer and closer to the time in which the new cities will take over services.
With a great deal of anticipation and anxiety, many of these Fulton County employees listened as county leaders laid out the status of the transition to the new city. This packed meeting at the Aviation Community Cultural Center was one of a few that the county has hosted to keep employees impacted by the transition updated on the process.
Salaries will not change, none of that.
But this was the first time the staffers were able to hear from the new city's leadership about the city's plan.
Transitions are not easy. And when you're talking about employment, you're talking about someone's livelihood. You're talking about how they eat. And so we wanted, as the administration from the city of South Fulton, as well as from the county, to be able to answer their questions, those questions that they asked that we did not have answers to be able to go back and get those answers for them.
The new city leadership was sworn into service on April 29th. And the new city business officially began on May 1st. The new city and the county are now working to transition the services of police, fire, parks and recreation, and planning and zoning.
Our job, obviously, as a county is to keep providing services at the same level we've been providing and give as much support to them as possible so it's smooth. We don't want the citizens to notice anything.
The City of South Fulton's interim manager explained that Fulton employees will have to apply for the jobs since the positions are technically with a new government. And along with the questions about salary came the questions about benefits.
We wanted to make sure that they understood that we are working diligently, we are analyzing and looking at the current salary structure so that when I make a recommendation to the city council and the mayor of the city of South Fulton, that it is comprehensive, including the salaries as well as the benefits.
We certainly intend to keep giving these employees a chance to ask questions because their future's at stake, so they're concerned about it. We want to answer as many questions as we can.
City officials are now working on their new city website and HR functions. And as those come online, Fulton County employees, and anybody else for that matter, can apply for those jobs. Reporting from Welcome All Park, I'm Priscilla Ortega for FGTV.
Thank you, Priscilla. Now, when we come back, Chief Operating Officer Todd Long joins us to talk more about these transition meetings and why they're so important. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Fulton at Work. I'm Daryl Carver. When unincorporated South Fulton residents voted for cityhood, many questions arose about the county employees providing services to that area. Joining us now to explain how that process works is the county's Chief Operating Officer, Todd Long. Mr. Long, first of all, thank you for joining us here at Fulton at Work.
Glad to be here.
Now, which county services are directly affected by South Fulton's transition to cityhood?
Well, we have a number of services, obviously, like any city, and dividing up who does what is going to be a discussion we do over time. But essentially, the core services that the city of South Fulton will take over will be planning and community development, code enforcement, police, fire, parks and rec, and ultimately potentially transportation. So those are the services we provide in that area now that are kind of unique to the rest of the county. We provide those, we call it the Special Service District. It's under what we call the SSD fund. It stands for Special Service District. We've been providing that service for quite some time now and doing a good job, but obviously as we transfer those services over, we want this transfer to be literally invisible to the citizen who lives down there.
Now, 400 employees are impacted by the transition. Talk about why it's so important to meet with them on a monthly basis.
Right, so it really is a major change in a person's life because they're changing their employment potentially from Fulton County government to another form of government, in this case the city of South Fulton. It's a whole new retirement plan, a whole new benefit package, whole new pay structure. So as we talked to the employees, we felt it was very important to get the city to come over and kind of give some information. In our last meeting, Ruth Jones, who's the interim city manager, did a great job by coming over and fielding as many questions as she possibly could. Obviously, she's at the direction of the city council in regards to what she could say, but she clearly told the employees that, look, you're going to get potentially a chance to come over at the same pay and in the same job, which is really all they could ask for, because as you start a new position, a new city, it could have gone any way from that. It could have been they hired all new people for the city. So we're talking potentially over 400 employees have an opportunity to potentially move over. Now the city will have a process in place. They'll have I think an online application. I think that's what the city is kind of leaning toward, where you can go in and apply for the jobs. But essentially, it makes it about as easy as it possibly can to make the transition. Now, we got to remind people, this is, as we know it today, this is kind of the truth we tell. And obviously, as they move forward, the city will have the opportunity to do whatever they want to. That'll be their decision, and once these services are transferred over. But until such time, this is very important, until such time that the employees are actually transferred over. So in other words, let's take code enforcement. Until those 20 employees in code enforcement are transferred over, they will continue to work for the county, but provide service for the area that is known as the city of South Fulton. So in other words, we will essentially bill at the end of this period the city for the services the county has provided within the city limits since May 1st. And then after those employees become city employees, they'll just be working for the city and getting paid directly by the city.
Now, what kind of information have you been able to share with the employees? I know you've kind of gone into some of that, but go into a little bit more about what those employees have asked and what have you been able to tell them?
Right. So the employees that we know that are affected first, in other words, the planning office, the code enforcement, and police, because that's what the city has told us in order. They said those are the offices that they like to bring over in the very beginning. Well, those employees have gotten a letter from us. It's a reduction in force letter, essentially, but it's a kind of a modified RIF, as commonly referred to. But what it does is allows them some advantages that normally would not be the case. So in other words, for instance, if you've been an employee that's under the program where you get within a full, you receive your county allotment towards your retirement after a full 5 years, and if you leave before 5 years, you get penalized typically 20% per year. Well, that goes away under the RIF. So that's kind of an advantage we put in place. And the board allowed us to do that with each office as they come on board with the new city. So those are, to me, I think the RIF letter was actually an advantage for the employees to let them know, hey, what was coming up, and we'll obviously keep them as informed as possible. But as they get ready to leave county employment and hopefully enter city employment, then they'll have to make a decision about how they want to deal with their retirement and where they move their monies and those kind of things. And those are the kind of questions that a lot of the employees ask, is what happens to the checks of my annual leave, what happens to my retirement with the county, what kind of retirement program does the city have? And those are questions you would think anybody would ask, but they were certainly great questions and answered really to the best of our abilities at that meeting.
Now, the commissioners have also held a special called meeting at the end of May to discuss the new city's IGA. Why was that such a huge deal?
Right, the current law is pretty basic. It just says that until an office transfers to the city, the county will keep providing that service and bill the county for a cost. Well, not a lot of detail. So we decided that we, as in the city of South Fulton and Fulton County, decided that the best format to get this taken care of is through an intergovernmental agreement. We call it an IGA. And that intergovernmental agreement takes into consideration all the services I've just given you a minute ago about fire, police, parks, rec, et cetera. But it also takes into consideration animal control, 911 services, and a few other services that are important for the city. And it lays out who's going to do what and when and how much it's going to be and how it's going to be paid. Well, that ongoing negotiation between the city and the county has been a topic we've discussed with the board and gotten their direction. May 31st special call board meeting is to get further direction from the board to give to executive staff in our discussions with the city, so that everybody's on the same page, the board, staff here at Fulton County, as well as the staff and city council at the City of South Fulton.
Now, how will the county's 911 operation be affected by the transition?
Well, we're continuing to provide service, 911 service for the area that is now City of South Fulton, and we are hoping that that continues even in the future, but that would have to be a paid-for service by the City of South Fulton to provide 911 services. Just like Union City pays us now to do dispatch for them. It will be very similar in structure.
And just some final thoughts on the transition. I mean, this has been a process that Fulton County has been through before with other cities that have spun off. This one has a little bit different dynamic to it, though.
Well, this one has a different dynamic because it's the last one, theoretically. Well, I guess that's not necessarily true, but because we've got this strange situation in that the Fulton Industrial Boulevard area, essentially out there, is about a 7 to 8 mile stretch of roadway that is now still unincorporated. It did not make it into the City of South Fulton in this process because of some pending lawsuits that dating back to 1979. So anyway, there was a House Bill 131 and House Bill 132 that would potentially clean some of that up. That was vetoed by the governor and therefore is not going forward. So we've got to figure out from a county standpoint, how are we going to continue to provide services for this small area that really has only 300 to 400 people living in it, but yet has a tremendous, obviously, an industrial area of tremendous workforce that is in that area every day. Thousands of people come to Fulton Industrial Boulevard every day to work from all over the region. So providing fire and police to that area becomes a challenge for us. So that we're talking to the City of South Fulton about possibly doing that for us under a contract. So we're doing that for them under a contract now. Essentially, they will be doing it for us. So it's very unique, and it becomes the last really big unincorporated area becoming a city. That's the big difference here. Unlike Chattahoochee Hills and Johns Creek, we still were left with a significant unincorporated Fulton. In this case, we will not be left with a significant unincorporated Fulton.
Great information. Mr. Long, thank you for joining us here at Fulton
Glad
at Work.
to be here.
Now, when we come back, Tax Commissioner Arthur Ferdinand joins us to talk taxes for the City of South Fulton. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Fulton at Work. I'm Darrell Carver. How will taxes play a role in South Fulton's success as a city? Joining us now to answer that question and more is Fulton County's Tax Commissioner Arthur Ferdinand. First of all, thank you for joining us here at Fulton at Work.
Thanks, Darrell. Thanks for having me.
So please explain why taxes and tax collections are so critical to the success of this new city.
Taxes are critical to the success of any city or county. It pays for the majority of services that are rendered by the city or municipality to the constituents or the resident of the city. Without taxes, you wouldn't be able to have police protection or fire services or any of those critical services, or for the social services that are vital to the well-being of residents. And so good collections enable a city to perform well in terms of providing what they need for their citizens.
Explain your office's role in this transition.
Well, the tax commissioner's office is always vital in the transition of a city. First of all, they need money to operate. In this case, the city is formed at the end of the year rather than in January. So it's very important that we separate the monies going to the county that operated it for the first few months versus the second half of the year, where the city is responsible and should be getting all the revenues. So it is vital for us to make sure that we understand it and do it very well. Also, it is important that we know who the residents are and where they live. And that's very important also for motor vehicles. So it's now a time when we are going through maps and roads and making sure that we have the residents in the right place so that we could tax them properly and make sure to get the right motor vehicle information in the system. And usually this time of the year, with any one of those transitions, we are fine-tuning the residences and whether they are in this city or that city or in a county or the new municipality. So it's a very critical and delicate time for us. More so this time because of the nature of this transition, where it's not in January, but in the later part of the year, June in this case.
Give us some idea of how you handled other transitions and what are the options for the new city?
Well, in this case, as I mentioned, the city did not start in January. It's always very easy when it starts in January, because that's a key date for any tax commissioner, because values and taxation they are assigned on January 1st. But late in the year, it's a little more problematic, but we are handling that. With the other cities, we didn't have that problem. So it takes a little more effort on our part to transition a city in the middle of the year. Millage rates split and things like that. Usually in the other cities, the millage rates apply from the beginning of the year. This one is a different. We have to use two different millage rates depending on which jurisdiction we are calculating taxes for. Also, in this case, we have the Fulton Industrial Boulevard, which is just extracted from the South Fulton calculations. So that threw a little wrench in our work. So we have to do some unraveling of what we had done before because of that veto by the governor. And so it's a little more effort on our part in order to get it right and perfect. That's our objective.
Now, speaking of the governor's veto, how will that financially impact the city of South Fulton?
Well, I would say that the financial impact, in terms of money, it's about $5 to $6 million that comes out of Fulton Industrial Boulevard. But I would think that the mayor probably anticipated a city with or without. In either case, if that $5 million doesn't go to South Fulton, they also don't have to provide services to that Fulton Industrial Boulevard. And usually taxes are there to provide services. Well, they don't have that to worry about. And so from my standpoint, I don't think it really matters in terms of whether the city succeeds or not. They won't get that $5 million, but they don't have to provide $5 million in services.
Has your office already been contacted to assist with services for the new city?
My office has been contacted by the transition team and by the mayor for providing services to the new city. We were working on a collection agreement for the last few weeks, and that collection agreement was ratified by the city council. And so we all set. So we'll bring that collection agreement to the county for their ratification. And so we are all set. We just have to make sure that we get the information in the system correctly. And we are working with the Board of Assessors who provide that type of data, billing data.
And what are your final thoughts on this entire process?
Well, my team and I, we're used to transitions. We are used to creating new tax bills. And so we take it in stride. This one is a little more problematic, but we have a veteran team. And from my standpoint, I think the city will succeed. I wish them all the best, and we are here to help them. We have already met with the city manager, the finance director. We talk to the mayor continuously, so we are all set to provide and help them in whatever way possible. But I'm sure they will succeed, and I'm here to help them do that.
Tax Commissioner Arthur Ferdinand, thank you for your time, and thank you for giving some great information.
Thanks for having me. And to the new city, I wish you well.
And we'll be back to wrap up the show after this short break. That's all of our time. Thanks for joining us for Fulton at Work, and a very special thanks to our guests today. Now, we want to connect with you online. Please check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm Daryl Carver, and we'll see you next time.